The three reptilian mercenaries had cornered the small insect-like child against a market stall. They laughed as they knocked over the little one's basket, scattering colorful stones across the metal floor. "What is this garbage?" the largest one hissed. "You think anyone wants to buy rocks from a bug?" The child, a young Mellori named Rill, tried to gather the stones with trembling hands. These are not just rocks. They were memory crystals from Rill's destroyed homeworld. The only things left of a family that no longer existed. A shadow fell across the scene. The mercenaries turned to find a human woman standing behind them. She was small, thin, and wore the gray uniform of a cleaning worker. Her pale eyes watched them without blinking. She said nothing. "What do you want, sweeper?" the mercenary growled. The woman did not answer. She simply stood there, placing herself between the mercenaries and Rill. Her silence was strange, uncomfortable, the kind of quiet that made you want to fill it with noise just to make it stop. The mercenaries shifted on their feet. Something about those pale eyes made their scales itch. "Forget it," the leader muttered. "The bug isn't worth our time." They walked away, laughing too loudly, pretending they had chosen to leave. The woman watched them go. Only when they disappeared around a corner did she kneel down and help Rill gather the scattered crystals. Her name was Ada Reeves. She had worked on Waypoint Omega Station for 6 years. She cleaned floors. She fixed broken pipes. She went unnoticed by everyone except the small Mellori child who now held her hand as they walked through the crowded corridors. Waypoint Omega floated in neutral space where dozens of species came to trade. It was loud and bright, and full of beings who never looked twice at the quiet human with a mop. That was fine with Ada. She preferred it that way. In the station's small garden dome, Ada and Rill sat among the artificial plants. Sunlight from fake windows warmed their faces. Rill's small claws moved quickly, making shapes in the air. Sign language. The only way Ada communicated with anyone. "Why do they hate us?" Rill signed. "They hate what they don't understand." Ada signed back. "Small things. Quiet things. Things that don't fight back. You don't fight back either. But you're not scared of them." Ada's hands paused. Then she signed, "I am scared of many things, little one. Just not of them." Later that day, a human military officer found Ada in the maintenance tunnels. Lieutenant Naya Okonkwo was tall and strong, with the look of someone who had seen battles and survived them. She seemed nervous now, which was strange for a soldier. "Ada Reeves?" she asked. Ada nodded but did not speak. "I need to ask you some questions about your family history. Your grandmother, specifically." The lieutenant pulled out a small screen showing old Earth documents. "There are records that suggest your bloodline carries something. A genetic marker. Something very old." Ada kept working, spraying cleaning solution on a wall panel. "It's called the wolf mark," Okonkwo continued. "An ancient power that some humans carry without knowing it. The records say your grandmother had it. Her mother before her. Going back hundreds of generations." Ada wiped the panel clean. She did not look at the lieutenant. "Please," Okonkwo said, "if you have it, if you know anything about it, I need to understand. There are legends that say it can." Ada finally turned. She pulled down the collar of her uniform slightly, showing her shoulder blade. There, barely visible, was a birthmark in the shape of something that might have been a wolf's head, or might have been nothing at all. She let the collar go and returned to her work. Okonkwo stared. "Does it do anything?" Ada's expression never changed. She picked up her cleaning cart and walked away, leaving the lieutenant alone in the tunnel with more questions than answers. That night, every screen on the station flickered with an emergency broadcast. A fleet had arrived. Massive warships bearing the crimson symbol of the most feared slaver cartel in the galaxy. Commissioner Drallo, the elephant-like administrator of Waypoint Omega, appeared on screen with sweat rolling down his gray hide. "The station will maintain neutrality," he announced. "All residents are advised to remain calm. The Crimson Brand fleet is here for legitimate business purposes." Ada stood at a viewport in an empty corridor. She could see the slaver ships hanging in space like hungry predators. And among them, held by tractor beams, was a smaller vessel. A ship designed for one purpose only: carrying children, Through the viewport of that captured ship, Ada could see small faces pressed against the glass. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Children of species she had never seen, stolen from worlds she would never know. Her shoulder blade began to burn. Ada pressed her hand against the cold viewport. Her reflection stared back at her. Pale eyes, quiet face, the same unremarkable human she had always been. But deep inside, something very old was starting to wake up, and it was angry. Warlord Sethka walked through Waypoint Omega like he owned every corridor, every being, every breath of recycled air. His scales were dark red, almost black, and his yellow eyes swept over the crowds with the lazy confidence of a predator who had never met anything stronger than himself. His mercenaries shoved aside anyone too slow to move. A merchant fell. A child cried. Nobody helped them. Everyone simply looked away and pretended the monster was not among them. Beautiful station, Sethka said to Commissioner Drallo, who shuffled alongside him with his trunk curled tight against his chest. So many customers. So much potential. The Crimson Brand is welcome to conduct legitimate trade, Drallo said carefully, within the boundaries of station law. Sethka laughed. The sound was like bones breaking. Law, he repeated. Yes, let's discuss law. I have cargo to sell. Living cargo. Young, healthy, trainable. Many species. Very valuable. Drallo's gray skin went pale. The children. Property, Sethka corrected. Acquired through legal conquest. Your laws allow the sale of property, do they not? The commissioner wanted to say no. He wanted to refuse. But behind Sethka stood 50 armed mercenaries, and behind them floated a fleet of warships that could turn the station to dust in minutes. An auction will be arranged, Drallo whispered. Good. Sethka patted the commissioner's shoulder with a clawed hand. I knew you would be reasonable. The announcement went out across every channel. In 3 days, there would be an auction. Living beings sold to the highest bidder. The galaxy watched in horror. Earth's embassy filed a formal protest. A dozen other species complained. Nothing changed. Ada heard the news while cleaning the observation deck. Through the massive windows, she could see the captured nursery ship held between two slaver vessels. Small hands still pressed against the glass over there. Small faces still watched the stars, waiting for someone to save them. Her mop handle creaked in her grip. She forced herself to breathe, to stay calm, to remain what she had always been. Quiet, invisible, safe to in the garden dome. Rill was crying. Ada found the little Mellori curled up beneath a fake tree, clutching a memory crystal so tightly that it left marks on those small claws. Ada sat down beside Rill and waited. I was on a ship like that. Rill finally signed. 2 years ago, the Crimson Brand took our colony ship. My parents fought. They died. I only escaped because I was small enough to hide in a ventilation shaft. Ada's hands trembled as she signed back. I'm sorry. Those children will be sold. They will be slaves. They will forget their families, their worlds, their names. Rill looked up with compound eyes full of tears. Someone has to help them. Please, Ada. Someone has to do something. Ada closed her eyes. She felt the burn on her shoulder blade growing stronger. She heard whispers in her mind that were not quite words. Ancient voices. Waiting voices. She opened her eyes and signed. I am just a cleaner. You are more than that. I have always known it. Everyone who looks at you feels it, even if they don't understand. You're something old, something powerful, something that sleeps. Ada stood up and walked away. She could not look at Rill's desperate face anymore. That night, Lieutenant Okonkwo found her again. This time, the soldier was not alone. She had brought a data pad filled with ancient Earth texts. The wolf mark, Okonkwo said. I've spent 3 days researching it. The legends say it was placed in human DNA thousands of years ago by beings from outside our dimension. They chose humanity because we feel emotions more strongly than any other species. Love, rage, the need to protect. These feelings can actually change reality if they're strong enough. Ada stared at the floor. The mark only activates to protect the innocent. Okonkwo continued. It's not a weapon for conquest. It's a failsafe, a last resort. When a carrier sees true evil threatening the helpless, and when they finally break. She paused. Reality breaks with them. Ada finally looked up. Her pale eyes caught the light strangely. I have been silent for 20 years, she said. Her voice was rough from lack of use, barely more than a whisper. I learned as a child that when I speak in anger, things break. So I chose not to speak. Ever. Okonkwo leaned forward. And now, those children out there. Ada's shoulder blade burned like fire. The whispers in her mind grew louder. The wolf mark glowed faintly through her uniform, a silver light that should not exist. Now, Ada whispered, I'm finding it very hard to stay quiet. The station announcement system crackled. Sethka's voice filled every corridor. The auction begins in 48 hours. Any species attempting interference will have their homeworld added to our target list. Cooperation is appreciated. Resistance is extinction. Somewhere in the Garden Dome, a small Mellori child made a decision. Rill was going to save those children alone if no one else would. And Rill was going to get caught. Rill moved through the ventilation shaft like water through a pipe. Being small had saved the young Mellori once before. It would save those children now. That was the plan. Crawl through the ducts, reach the docking bay, find a way onto the nursery ship, and free everyone that I could see was a terrible plan. Rill knew this, but nobody else was doing anything. The shaft opened above a storage room. Rill dropped down silently and pressed against the wall. Voices echoed from the corridor outside. Mercenary voices. The little Mellori waited until they passed, then crept toward the door. A clawed hand grabbed Rill from behind. What do we have here? A Voskan guard hissed. A little bug playing hero. Rill struggled, but it was useless. More guards appeared. They laughed at the tiny creature fighting against their grip. Bring it to Sethka, one of them ordered. He likes examples. In her small quarters, Ada stood before a mirror with her shirt removed. The wolf mark on her shoulder blade was glowing now. Not faintly, brightly. Silver light spilled across the walls like liquid moonlight. She touched the mark and the universe opened. Visions flooded her mind. Wolves running across ancient earth, their howls echoing through forests that no longer existed. Strange beings made of angles and shadows, placing something into sleeping humans, a gift and a burden meant to last forever. Generations of women carrying the mark without knowing, living ordinary lives, dying ordinary deaths, the power never waking because the trigger was never pulled. The wolf mark was a key, a bridge between dimensions. And it only opened when a carrier felt injustice so deeply that their soul screamed loud enough to crack reality. We chose your kind, the hollow ones whispered in her mind. Because you love without limit. Because you protect without question. Because when you break beautifully. I don't want to break, Ada thought back. Then do not watch the innocent suffer. That is the only way to stay whole. The vision faded. Ada stood alone in her quarters, shaking. The mark still burned. The power inside her churned like a storm waiting to be released. The station announcement system crackled to life. Citizens of Waypoint Omega, Sethka's voice declared. We have captured a saboteur. A small Mellori creature that thought it could challenge the Crimson brand. Tomorrow, before the main auction, this insect will be sold first. A demonstration of what happens to heroes. Ada's hands curled into fists. Not Rill. Please. Anyone but Rill. She ran. Through corridors, past startled workers, into the main promenade where crowds gathered around display screens. Sethka appeared on every one of them, holding up a small cage. Inside, Rill huddled in the corner, compound eyes wide with terror. Look at this brave little thing, Sethka mocked. It wanted to save children. How touching. How stupid. He rattled the cage. Starting bid tomorrow, 1,000 credits. A bargain for such entertainment. The screens went dark. Ada stood frozen in the crowd. Around her, beings of a dozen species muttered and shook their heads. Poor little creature. Terrible situation. Nothing we can do. Nothing we can do. She had heard those words her entire life. Where her parents died, when she was alone. When the universe proved again and again that it did not care about the small or the weak or the silent. But the universe was wrong. Ada began walking. She did not know where she was going. Her feet moved on their own, carrying her towards something inevitable. The mark on her back blazed so bright that her uniform began to smoke. Lieutenant Okonkwo found her in a corridor near the central lift. One look at Ada's glowing eyes made the soldier step back. "It's happening," Okonkwo breathed. "The wolf mark. It's waking up." "Real," Ada whispered. The single word cracked the light panels overhead. "I know. I saw the broadcast. Ada, listen to me. If you do this, if you break, there's no going back. The old texts say the power consumes carriers who aren't ready. It will change you." Ada turned to face her. Silver light poured from her eyes like tears. "Rill is the only friend I have in this universe. The only being who ever saw me instead of looking through me. Those children on that ship have done nothing wrong. They are innocent." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "And I am done being quiet." Okonkwo dropped to one knee. "What do you need from me? Stay out of my way." Ada walked past her toward the main promenade. Beings moved aside without understanding why. Some felt a pressure in their minds. Some saw shadows of wolves flickering at the edge of their vision. Some simply knew, on an instinctive level, that something very old and very angry was passing through. Commissioner Drallo appeared ahead, trunk raised in alarm. "Stop! You are disrupting station order. I command you to—" Ada looked at him, just looked. The commissioner's words died in his throat. He stepped aside, pressed against the wall, trembling. Ada continued walking. The wolf was awake, and the hunt was about to begin. Sethka stood at his podium like a king surveying his kingdom. The auction platform rose above the main promenade, surrounded by wealthy buyers from a dozen worlds. They sat in comfortable chairs, drinking expensive liquids, waiting to purchase living beings like furniture. The small cage sat on display beside the warlord. Inside, Rill pressed against the bars, searching the crowd for any sign of hope. "Welcome, honored guests," Sethka announced. "Before we begin the main event, a small appetizer. This little creature thought it could be a hero. Let's show the galaxy what happens to heroes." The lights flickered, and no one noticed at first. A small glitch, nothing more. But then they flickered again, and the temperature in the promenade dropped 10 degrees in a single heartbeat. The crowd stirred. Guards tightened their grips on weapons. Something was wrong. She came for the eastern corridor. Ada walked through the parting crowd like a ghost. Her gray cleaning uniform was burned through at the shoulder where silver light blazed from the wolf mark. Her pale eyes had become twin stars, bright enough to cast shadows. She moved slowly, deliberately, each step carrying the weight of something ancient. "What is this?" Sethka growled. "Who let a sweeper into my auction?" Ada stopped at the base of the platform. She looked up at the cage where Rill watched with disbelief. Then she spoke. "Rill." One word, just a name, but the sound of it rippled through the air like a stone dropped in still water. Sethka's podium cracked down the middle. The display screens behind him shattered. Every electronic device in the promenade died instantly, plunging the space into silence broken only by emergency lighting. In that silence, Ada spoke again. "Let them go." Sethka bared his teeth in what might have been a smile. "You think I am afraid of light tricks? I have conquered worlds, little human. I have burned civilizations. What are you? I am a consequence of your choices." The warlord laughed. "Take her." 20 mercenaries charged forward with weapons raised. The crowd scattered, screaming as chaos erupted. Ada did not move. She did not flinch. She simply stood there as armed soldiers rushed toward her. They never reached her. Space folded. That was the only way to describe it. The air between Ada and the mercenaries twisted, bent, became something else entirely. One moment, 20 soldiers ran toward her. The next moment, they were gone. Not dead, simply elsewhere, scattered across 1,000 light years in the blink of an eye. The remaining mercenaries opened fire. Energy bolts streaked toward Ada from all directions. Blue and red and green, enough firepower to vaporize a tank. The bolts stopped in midair, hanging frozen like insects in amber. Then they turned. Then they flew back toward the ones who fired them. Screams echoed through the promenade. Mercenaries fell. Others ran. The wealthy buyers trampled each other, trying to escape. Ada walked through the chaos like it was nothing. Weapons fire passed around her, deflected by forces that should not exist. She climbed the steps to the auction platform, while Sethka watched with the first hint of fear in his yellow eyes. "What are you?" he whispered. "Human," Ada said. She reached the cage and tore off the door with her bare hands. Rill scrambled out and leaped into her arms, tiny claws clutching her burned uniform. "I knew it," Rill signed against her chest. "I knew you would come." Ada held the small Mellory close. For a moment, the silver light softened. The ancient power receded slightly, held back by love. Then Sethka moved. He grabbed a guard's fallen weapon and pressed it against the back of Rill's head. One more step, and the bug dies. Ada went still. "That's better." Sethka smiled his broken bone smile. "Now, you will let me leave this station. You will let my fleet depart. Or I pull this trigger, and your little friend becomes a stain." From a nursery ship hanging in space, 200 children watched through viewports. They could not hear what was happening, but they could see the silver light. They could see the small human woman standing against the monster. And they would never forget what happened next. Ada looked into Sethka's eyes. "You should not have threatened the child." The wolf mark pulsed. Once, twice, that on the third pulse, Ada and Sethka both vanished in a flash of silver light. One moment they were on the platform. The next, they were gone. Rill dropped to the floor of the stage, alone and trembling. Across the station, aboard Sethka's flagship, reality tore open and deposited two figures on the bridge. Ada stood calm and still, her eyes burning like stars. Sethka stumbled backward, weapon still clutched in his shaking hand. "How?" he gasped. "I folded space," Ada said simply. "I thought you might want to see your ship one last time." The hunt had truly begun. Alarms screamed through the corridors of the flagship. Red lights flashed. Crew members ran in every direction, some toward battle stations, others toward escape pods. None of them understood what was happening, only that something had boarded their ship, something wrong. Ada walked through the chaos without hurrying. Doors opened before she reached them, locks breaking at her approach. Guards who stood their ground found their weapons turning to dust in their hands. Those who fired at her watched their shots curve away harmlessly into walls. She was not fighting. She was simply moving forward, and everything that tried to stop her failed. In the cargo bays, enslaved workers looked up as she passed. Some of them were old, captured long ago, who had forgotten what hope felt like. Some were young, still crying for parents who would never come. They saw the silver glow around the small human woman, and something stirred in their memories. "The wolf," an ancient Mellory whispered. From the old stories. "The wolf walks when evil goes too far." Ada paused long enough to melt the locks on their chains. Then she continued on. Sethka had run deeper into the ship, toward his personal quarters where his most valuable prisoners were kept. He had centuries of cruelty behind him. He had destroyed worlds. He had made entire species bow to his will through fear and violence. He had never been afraid before. He was afraid now. The warlord burst into his quarters and slammed the door behind him. He activated every security system, energy shields, gas defenses, auto turrets. If anything could stop her, this room could. Rill's cage sat in the corner, brought here before the auction. Empty now, useless, but a reminder of the chain of events that had led to this moment. "She's just one human," Sethka muttered to himself. "One small, weak human. I have killed thousands of them. They are nothing. They are prey." The lights went out. When they came back on, Ada stood in the center of the room. Every defense had failed silently. Every weapon had stopped working. She looked at Sethka with those burning silver eyes and waited. "You cannot do this," the warlord snarled. "I am Sethka. I am a crimson brand. I have crushed empires. I have made gods beg. And I am a cleaning woman," Ada said quietly, "who mopped floors and fixed pipes and went unnoticed for years. But I am also human, and you threatened my friend. You threatened children. That was a mistake." Sethka drew a blade from his belt. Old metal, a trophy from some forgotten conquest. He had killed many with this blade. It felt good in his hand. Familiar. Powerful. I will cut you apart, he promised. You will try. He lunged. Ada did not move. She did not need to. The blade stopped an inch from her face, frozen in space by forces that laughed at physics. Sethka strained against the invisible grip, but could not push forward even a millimeter. Let me show you something, Ada said. She reached out and touched his forehead with one finger. The wolf mark pulsed, and Sethka began to scream. Every atrocity, every murder, every slave he had sold, every child he had stolen, every planet he had burned. He experienced all of it at once, not as the perpetrator, as the victims. He felt their fear, their pain, their despair. Centuries of suffering compressed into a single endless moment. The screaming went on for a long time. When it finally stopped, Sethka lay on the floor in a trembling heap. His scales had gone pale. His eyes stared at nothing. I could erase you, Ada said. The Hollow Ones tell me it would be easy. You would simply stop existing. Every memory of you would fade. Even your victims would forget you, which might be the kindest thing. She knelt beside him. But I'm not kind. I am human, and humans believe in consequences. The wolf mark flared one final time. When the light faded, something new marked Sethka's face. A brand, the shape of a wolf, burned into his scales in silver that would never heal and never fade. Everyone who sees you will know what you are, Ada said. You will live. You will remember. And you will never be feared again. Only pitied. Only despised. She stood and walked to the bridge. Through the viewports, she could see the entire Crimson Brand fleet. Dozens of warships, thousands of crew members, all of them waiting for orders that would never come. Ada spoke. Her voice carried through every speaker on every ship. I am taking the children. Your warlord lives, but he is finished. You have 1 hour to leave this system. If any of you ever threaten the innocent again, I will know. I will find you, and I will not be merciful a second time. She looked out at the stars. Go. They went. 2 weeks had passed since the day reality broke on Waypoint Omega. The station was different now. Commissioner Drallo had resigned in disgrace, replaced by a council of elected representatives. The nursery ship children had been given sanctuary, their faces appearing on news broadcasts as families across the galaxy came forward to claim them or offer new homes. The Crimson Brand had scattered like leaves in a storm. Without Sethka, without fear, they were nothing. Former slavers turned themselves and rather than risk the attention of the wolf. And Ada Reeves went back to work. She pushed her cleaning cart through the maintenance corridors, spraying surfaces and wiping down panels. Her uniform was new, replacing the one that had burned. Her pale eyes no longer glowed. The wolf mark on her shoulder blade had faded back to a simple birthmark, barely visible if you did not know where to look. You could be a queen, Lieutenant Okonkwo had said to her. Every government in the galaxy wants to meet you. They're afraid. They want to understand. They want to make sure you're on their side. Ada had shaken her head. I'm a cleaner. That is all I want to be. In the Garden Dome, Rill waited. The little Mellori had not left the station. The other Mellori refugees had offered to take Rill to the new colony, but Rill had refused. Home was here now. Home was wherever Ada was. Ada sat down beside her friend beneath the fake trees. Artificial sunlight warmed their faces. For a long moment, neither of them communicated. They simply existed together, peaceful and quiet. Then Rill's claws began to move. Why were you silent for so long? You had all that power. You could have helped so many people before. Ada thought for a while before signing back. When I was a child, I learned that my words had power. When I was angry, things broke. When I was scared, things changed. I did not understand it. I could not control it. So I chose silence. I chose to hold the power inside, to keep it safe, to make sure it could never hurt anyone. But you broke the silence for me. For the children. Yes. Ada's hands moved slowly. I learned something important that day. Silence is not safety. Sometimes silence is just another kind of prison. I kept myself locked away to protect others, but I also kept myself from protecting the ones who truly needed it. Rill crawled into Ada's lap, small and warm. Will you be silent again? Perhaps, but a different kind of silence. The kind that waits and watches. The kind that speaks when speaking matters. Across the galaxy, The story spread in cantinas and council chambers, in refugee camps and royal courts, being spoke of the human woman who destroyed a slaver fleet without weapons. The details changed with each telling. Some said she was 8 feet tall with fangs and claws. Others said she was a spirit from ancient Earth, summoned by the prayers of children. A few got it right, describing a small, quiet cleaner who simply refused to look away from injustice. The children remembered best. 200 of them had watched from their prison ship as one human walked through fire for them. They told their new families. They told their friends. They would tell their own children someday. The story would never die because the ones who lived it would never let it die. On a space station orbiting a world far from Waypoint Omega, representatives from 12 major powers held a secret meeting. Humans carry this power in their blood, one delegate said. Dormant, perhaps, but present. What if more of them wake up? What if they decide to conquer instead of protect? A Melori elder raised a thin hand. I have studied the wolf mark for 60 years. It activates only to defend the innocent. It cannot be used for conquest, for greed, for personal gain. The power itself rejects those purposes. Then we have nothing to fear. We have nothing to fear as long as we do not threaten the helpless. The elder's compound eyes gleamed. Stop enslaving children. Stop burning worlds. Stop making the silent one scream. Do that, and the wolves will sleep forever. The meeting ended with no resolution. Fear and understanding could not agree. But somewhere in the back of every delegate's mind, a seed had been planted out on Waypoint Omega. Ada finished her shift and returned to her small quarters. She showered, changed into comfortable clothes, and sat by her window to watch the stars. The hollow ones whispered sometimes, echoes from that place between dimensions. They were pleased. Their creation had worked exactly as intended. A failsafe, a consequence, a reminder that the universe cared about justice even when it seemed not to. Rill knocked on her door, and Ada let the small Melori in. They shared a meal together, signing about nothing important. What tomorrow might bring. What flowers grew best in the garden dome. Whether the new commissioner would be any good. Simple things. Quiet things. Ada smiled more easily now. The weight she had carried for 20 years had not disappeared, but it had changed shape. It felt less like a burden and more like a promise. The wolf slept, but the wolf was always listening. And somewhere in the galaxy, someone would forget that humans were more than they seemed. Someone would threaten the innocent again. Someone would provoke the wrong person. When that day came, the silence would break, and reality would shatter once more.